Module 4, Unit 1, Networking Concepts. In this unit, our objective is to describe the components and functions of computer networks. Ito na yung mga devices, interfaces, and application of computer networks that we need to know. And then we will also cover the protocols, the technologies used in addressing a computer network. Yun ang mga matututunan natin along with the connections used in computer, either wired network or wireless networks ang ating pag-uusapan. And then we will cover also how to describe and know how to describe the uses of common application protocols. Now, to start with the networking concepts, we need to be aware of the network components when it comes to networking in general, di ba? So remember from our previous unit, we described the devices and interfaces being used. So we started with the type of network cards as devices for mga wired network, and then for wireless networks, and then the media, the cables. Pag sinabing media, ito yung mga wires or the connections na ginagamit, and the type of interfaces like the RJ45. Those are the things na we already covered from previous unit when it comes to devices, when it comes to using interfaces, and now we are focusing those devices dito sa networking. Now, these are the components, and then how it is worked, how it's been connected, from these network devices to the network walls, a port, and the cable that you use. You plug it to the wall, then all the way to the patch panel. Usually sa server room or sa mga cabinets, ito makikita nyo. Lahat yan directly connected sa mga workstations or network devices like printers, scanners, and so on. So, sa networking, meron din tinatawag na clients and servers. So, usually, yung clients, ito yung mga end devices from computers. Usually, ito yung may mga users. And meron kasi tinatawag din na host. Host in general, all devices na connected sa network. And then we also may tinatawag na local area networking o local area network o tinatawag na LAN. This is a network connection within the local building or within the same floor or within the same vicinity. Walang tinatawag na geographical separation. And then meron din tinatawag na wide area networking. Ito naman is a network from different locations, usually geographically separated, either from different building or different campus o kaya different vicinity or geography. Wide area networking. Meron pang tinatawag na MEN or Metropolitan Area Network. Meron ding GAN, Global Area Network. Those are different kinds of networks na much in detail sa Network Plus or sa mga networking technologies. Now, when we say network media, ito yung mga cables, di ba? Ito yung mga connections. And from when we say networks, merong wired network, di ba? Di ba? Meron ding wireless network. So, even wireless, it has a different form of network media na ginagamit. So, from nodes and hosts, ano mga ginagamit na devices, network cards, di ba? Meron mga wired network cards and wireless network cards or that you can insert as an additional port or an additional card or mga built-in sa computer. And the type of connection sa mga sa mga stations or sa nodes, yung mga end devices from coaxial and then copper. Actually, they are both copper. Ito coaxial cable, and this one yung tinatawag na twisted pair. And pag mga twisted pair cabling, meron pang mga shielded type at yung tawag na STP, and meron ding unshielded type, yung mga UTP cable, and then ito naman yung fiber. So all of these are used for wired network connections, wired data connections, and they use the technology Ethernet. Yan ang ginagamit sa local area networking or networking in general. And then so wireless connections, usually, di ba, from your phones, from laptops to even desktops, and in the meron din mga devices from printer scanner, no, you can hook them up through wireless networks as long as meron kang access point or wireless routers. That's how network communications are being set up. Those are the media that you use. You use here is a radio waves pa rin. And then meron na rin, sa mga wide area network connections or links ang tawag, yan ang concept na ginagamit. It is between different locations, di ba? Merong fiber optics na ginagamit from point to point, and then meron ding radio that is also point to point, meaning from one location to another, from for example site A or site B. So may radio na point to point dedicated lang sa kanilang dalawa. And then we also use our company phones, our cellular phones, di ba, personal or company, because I have both of them. No, cellular radio for networking. Available na yan. It started from, fiber and then radio na point to point or point to multi-point, and then meron ding satellite nowadays. It's even more tawag dito, located, even for remote, located remotely, yung mga satellite ang ginagamit rin sa networking. Now, when it comes to networking, we need to be aware as well and understand addressing and protocols. May mga term, those are the things are commonly used when it comes to networking. So, meron tinatawag na when it comes to addressing and protocols, these are the standards. Ito yung mga, like for example, in protocols, these are set of rules for interchanging information. So how you send, for example, how you join the network, how you frame a network or encapsulate a network, and then how you send the information on the network. May protocols ang tawag doon, may mga rules yon. And then meron ding standards like anong klaseng packet, anong klaseng address ang gagamitin, and then anong encapsulation ang gagamitin, and then meron ding standard lalo na when it comes to security. There are so many standards. And then yung addresses, ito yung you have seen this when you maybe some of you are already aware of this. Ito yung tinatawag na lalo na yung commonly known as the IP address. Ito yung address ng host from sender to another host at the destination. So it's a dotted decimal actually. Ito how it's your interface is being identified. This is how it's your your host is being identified in the network. And then meron tinatawag na source IP address, ating originating address, and then destination IP address is the IP address ng destination. So in this example, host, yung information being sent all over the network all the way to the destination, which is the server. Dito yung sender, and then ito yung destination. And then meron tinatawag din na frames. It's there's also different standards when it comes to network frames. In network frames, guys, ito yung information in a form of where the data will be sent, kung sino yung sender, and then sino yung destination, and then meron ding dyang integrity check, yung mga tinatawag na checksum, and then may headers, ibig sabihin na parang ito yung ID ng data frame, na what kind of data is this? Is this an Ethernet, or it is does the data is a broadcast, multicast? Those are the things. Ang tawag doon is headers and payloads within the frames and network packet. Yung frame kasi, ito yung yung Ethernet frame mismo within the local area network. Yung packet, ito yung encapsulation that we will discuss later on as well. And then ang mga network media, may standards din yan in protocols. From cabling, maraming standards. Guys, meron T1A o kaya T1AB, T1AB, and then E1A. Those are electrical standards ang makikita nyo. And then even sa Wi-Fi, radio standards, yung 802, di ba? Mga ano yan, mga Ethernet standards that are being used that you need to be aware, understand, but not to be in detail like as an networking engineer. But know that from cables to interface to packets and frames, no, starting from the host to destination, may mga addressing and protocols dyan. And then yung local network, usually ang ginagamit dyan is TCP/IP and IP addressing. Sa commercial networks yan, no? Pero sa mga industrial, there's other addressing and protocols that being used na pang industrial applications lang or like manufacturing or smart grid. Now, TCP/IP and packet transmission. Some of you probably have heard many times TCP/IP, but just to let you know, TCP/IP is TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, and the IP is the Internet Protocol. So this is a standard when it comes to data transmission or packet transmission or sa networking. Then meron din tinatawag na packet transmission and circuit based. When we say packet transmission, ito yung communication na yung between two from sender to destination are broken down into packets, electronic packets, ito na yung mismong encapsulation ng data, encapsulation ng IP, ng addresses in an electronic packet. Ito yung data itself in a packet na being sent or transmitted over the network. So, yun ang ibig sabihin ng packet transmission. And then, multiple paths is that from A to B, merong this direction that is a transmission, and transmission A, for example, or let's say transmission AB, and from A to C and B, yun ang transmission, another circuit, transmission circuit ACB. So, yun ang tinatawag ng multiple paths. So, routers, ang mga ginagamit dyan is, may mga tinatawag dito na routing protocols and then algorithms. Inaalam dyan kung sino yung may mga routing table yan eh. Like for example, A, to communicate with B, meron siyang routing information how to reach D. Whether to go to this direction, to B, to C, and D, or A to C, and then D, and then A to F, and then E, and then D. Those are routing information na nakalagay sa routing table na yun ang binabasa ng routers. That's how our data being transmitted, how information are being sent in the network to reach a destination. And then meron ding tinatawag na lost packets or mga corrupted packets or damaged packets, yung mga kasi ang information guys is electronic. And then pag poor signal quality, ang tawag din degraded signal, yung information mismo in a form of electronic is distorted, damaged. So by the time it reaches its destination, unreadable na yon, unrecognizable. And then sasabihin ng receiver, data is not being cannot be read. So ang gagawin, it is being resent. So may mga verification, may mga acknowledgement, may mga error check na tinatawag dyan. Now, when we say TCP/IP, it's a protocol, di ba, as I've said, and this is the layer architecture of TCP/IP. Meron kasing tinatawag na network layer, internet layer, transport layer, and application layer. Just to let you know, this derived from the ISO layers, in 7 layers of interconnection. 7 layers yun, di ba? But focusing on TCP/IP, when we say network layer, ito yung link and the interface itself. Remember the interface, the card, the cable, and then the encapsulation. Kung paano ini-encode as a frame ang Ethernet, for example. Meron dyan tinatawag, and then meron ding tinatawag between internet and the link layer, merong interface, yung tinatawag na ARP. This will be discussed as well, but it stands for Address Resolution Protocol. Makikita nyo sa internet layer, merong IP layer, ICMP, and then the transport layer, nandito pala yung TCP, and then yung counterpart niya is UDP. And then sa application layer, nandito yung ibang protocols. The DHCP, BOOTP, DNS, SSL, TLS, and so on. So, every layer ng communication from top to bottom, ito yung mga standards, ito yung mga protocols na being processed, being executed. Those are the things that applied. So, ang daming nangyayari, guys, when you send an information over the network, di ba? Maraming protocols, maraming standards between layers. So, as I've said earlier, di ba, yung link or network layer interface, ito yung sa lower layer na nandyan yung connections, di ba? Nandyan yung cards in media, and then yung framing, kung paano ini-encode or ini-encapsulate ang data. The data and the address, and then even the correction o yung CRC na tinatawag, cyclic redundancy check. Yung how to verify and confirm that the data is intact, is complete, hindi distorted, walang error, hindi missing. And then yung internet layer, di ba? Nandyan yung IP. Ayan yung internet protocol that we discussed that is part of TCP/IP suite. Nandito ang addressing between the host, between the, between servers, clients, and networks. Nandyan ang routing nangyayari. Nandyan yung address resolution protocol, di ba? This is in the interface between the link and then the internet layer. Nandyan minamatch yung yung host address and the IP address, the MAC address. And then nandyan din nangyayari yung ping. I remember if you have heard of that, yung ping command to check the connectivity, if you are connected or if you are reaching the destination. That is a protocol actually. ICMP, Internet Control Message Protocol. Yan ang mga nangyayari. Those are the things that you can do at internet layer. Now, sa transport layer, it's another layer that merong ginagamit yung TCP, yan yung connection-oriented, and then UDP, which stands for User Datagram Protocol, ito yung connectionless. When we say connection-oriented, yung communication between the sender and the destination is identified. May acknowledgement, may verification. So, every time, before you send an information, merong link, identified yung connection nyo. Kaya connection-oriented. Yung user datagram, ang ginagawa lang ng sender, padala na ng padala sa destination, and then walang acknowledgement if it is received, if it is the data is okay, but it's just padala na ng padala. Yun ang UDP. Yun ang protocol. Ginagamit yan usually sa mga video and voice. And some protocols then sa industrial na time sensitive. And then yung application layer, ito may mga protocol dyan na DHCP for control ng IP address, yung SSL that is for security, and then yung SMTP, ito yung mail transfer protocol, and then yung telnet, and then network management. Those are the protocols that is going on, no? So, let's talk more about internet protocol. Diba, as I've said, meron dyang IP address, then yung sender, and then destination. Diyan makakarating ang information. So I'm using the most practical term, no? And then the protocol, these are the rules for message exchange. And then yung checksum, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, yung to verify the integrity of the data, kung intact, kung the same information, and then yung time to live. Ito yung meron kasi tinatawag na time to live. This is the packet that being sent in the network na it expires. Pag na-reach yung time to live, na pag hindi the frame, the packet will be dropped. Instead of being, parang mail yan na pinapadala. Pag hindi nakarating sa destination, at a certain period of time, mag-expire and it will be dropped. It will either will return to the sender, or it will, it will be dropped. No one will receive it. Ganun ang analogy niyan. Kaya ang tawag ng time to live. So, again, sa Internet Protocol from device A to device B, di ba, a data is being sent. Ang tawag doon sa Ethernet network is Ethernet frame. Sa Ethernet frame, nandyan yung IP packet and then yung payload itself. So, itong Ethernet frame, di ba, makikita niyo may destination IP address, may source IP address, the time to leave, nandiyan ang protocol na ginagamit, either UDP or TCP, and other fields like checksum, yan ang kasama sa Ethernet packet. And then yung destination MAC address, ito yung physical address ng network interface. Ito yung hindi nagbabago, ito yung permanent and distinct sa bawat host, bawat devices na connected sa network. So that's how ganito ang itsura ng packet. Ganito ang itsura ng frame when we say IP, when we say Internet Protocol. Now, when it comes to IP address, alam nyo na ito. Ano IP address ng workstation mo? Ano IP address ng printer? So, just to inform you need to be aware, ano bang IP address? Aside from the numbers with dot, So, remember the bit binary, it is 32-bit expressed in dotted decimal. Like for example, ito, a binary, merong binary value yan. Ito yung decimal value with the binary value and expressed with dotted decimal. But 32-bit? Kasi itong 172 is 8-bit. This is 8-bit. This is 8-bit. And then another 8-bit. Bawat subnet, is an 8-bit binary value. Kaya 32-bit. Yun ang ibig sabihin nun. So like for example, yung decimal of 172, it has a binary value of 10101100. Remember from the previous unit, ang 'di ba, it's yung bawat binary bit has it's a double the value from the previous number, 'di ba? 2488, and then a mathematical expression yan to come up with 72 is this, 'di ba? 0, 0, 0, and then 1 is 4, and then 8 to 1 as described from the previous unit. Now, meron din when it comes to IP address, meron ng version 4 and version 6. In version 4 ang nauna, of course, this when it is known to be na nako-consume na lahat ng available IP address, lalo na yung public IP address. Public IP address na ginagamit ng mga service provider, mga internet service provider. Merong private IP address, of course. Ito yung ginagamit within the network. So, it's not being used in public. Yung mga non-routable address tawag doon. But anyway, bakit lumabas ang IP version 6? To expand the addressing ng IP. Nauubos na kasi ang version 4 kaya meron ng IP version 6. So ngayon, ang tanong is, what's the difference between the two? So as I've said, ito yung mga early days na networking. Version 4 ang tawag dyan, and then meron ng version 6 na deployed noong 1998 na project na nila doon before na time will come, this is overutilized. So for IP version 4, aside from its being 32-bit, it has 4.3 billion addresses na. So 4.3 billion. Everything on the net in the world, 'di ba? Every device in the world connected na, merong IP address lahat 'yon. So nare-use pa yan, meron tinatawag na masking, submasking, just to expand the utilization ng IP address. And yung format niya, 'di ba? Dotted decimal and 32-bit. As explained earlier, and then ang ginagamit dito, yung services or protocol is DHCP or by static, yung manual configuration. Yung version 6, 128 na yan. When we say 128, ilang yan? Spacing, ilang value ang represented This is hexadecimal na rin. Hindi na yung dotted decimal notation. Hexadecimal. These are hexadecimal if you remember. No, if 9 and then 10 is represented, or 11 is represented by A, di ba? And then B is 12 and so on. So, ganyan na hitsura ng IP version 6. Auto-configuration yan. Pag walang IP version 4, ito ang ginagamit. Automatic minsan. So, pag walang available address, walang DHCP server to give you the address, and then walang available version 4, IP version 6 ang ibibigay sa'yo. Yan ang gagamitan. Now, let's expand more about IP addressing. Meron tinatawag na network prefixes and subnet mask. When we say prefixes and subnet mask, dito ina-identify yung network ID and host ID. When we say network ID, ito yung may IP address din yan yung network mismo na kung saan connect ang devices in general or any host. So, merong sariling IP address that occupies the first 3 subnet and then the last one, host. Pag ang subnet mask mo is 255.255.255.0, ibig sabihin, ang nakamask ang network side mo. Ito yung network side. Yung 0, nandyan yung host side. Ito ang ginagamit sa mga routing. So, may prefix na tinatawag. It's either they call it as network prefix or subnet mask. This is what you mean. Ito yung subnet mask. So, inaalam dito na pag sinabing subnet mask, ito lang ang magagamit mo for addressing to identify a host. That's what you need to, so that's what we need you to understand when we say network prefixes and subnet mask. Now, let's try to understand packet delivery and forwarding. Ito na yung sinasabi natin na yung how data is being transmitted from one point to another, from sender to destination. So, ginagamit dyan ang addressing dyan, meron tinatawag na IP and then hardware and yung MAC address. So, from this diagram, nakikita mo, this network communication path is represented or interconnected by a hub. Hub, no? Masyadong slang. And then yung other host na part of the network is yung workstation with an IP address, and this workstation meron siyang sariling IP address and MAC address, and the same thing with this targeted host. So ito yung mga information address na kumakalat na being identified by the hub when an information being sent or broadcast by this sending host. So merong ang MAC address, this one. Ito yung permanent address. Ito yung kumbaga sa bahay nyo, ito yung permanent address ng host. Ito yung permanent ng hindi yan nababago. Kahit sa mo dalhin yung host na yan, it has the same MAC address. I-connect mo man sa kabilang network yan, it has the same MAC address. This is the format, hexadecimal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 hexadecimal numbers to represent a 48-bit MAC address. Now, yung IP address, diba, alam na natin yung format niyan, yung 32-bit, lalo na pag version 4. This is yung MAC address, it's being matched with the IP address. Kung meron kang MAC address, once you connect to the network, meron kang IP address. And then to match that, ang protocol na ginagamit dyan is Address Resolution Protocol. Sa madalit salita guys, when we say ARP, ang protocol niyan, it tells you sino ang mga devices na makikita mo. It tells you kung sino yung mga devices that you are connected with. So, when it comes to routing naman, sa packet delivery, pag ang information or packet is not within the same network at ipapadala sa kabilang network with the same setup but with a different IP network or subnetwork, routing na tawag doon. Because in this case, they are on the same subnet, the same network. Pag nagpadala si sending host, alam niya kung sino yung mga connected devices. So, the only one that we will respond pag ang packet coming out from here, it has the IP address, a destination IP address with this one, that 10.0.11. Ito naman, maririnig niya yung information, he will just drop it. This guy will just drop that packet because it doesn't belong to him. Hindi ka receiver eh. Unlike, it's different in our culture, di ba? Hindi para sa yung letter binuksan mo. No? That's something like that. Hindi ka yung destination eh. Now, meron din tinatawag na domain name system that we need to be aware when it comes to networking. DNS kung tawagin. So, it is also involved with IP address and MAC address since it's hard to remember, diba? And then when you're, I mean, computers use that, but us, when we are, talking about networking, pag tinanong ka ano ba ang IP address and ang MAC address, it's hard to remember. Ang daming number nun. No? Even phone numbers. No? We live in a day na hindi na natin madaling matandaan. Especially in my case. No? So, mas madaling tandaan kung we use a name. So, we match the names with numbers, with IPs. Ang tawag doon, DNS. This provide the service to match the IP address with with corresponding MAC address. And then in a system, this is the hierarchy. This is the architecture, I would say, when it comes to DNS. Well, kasi it is a record. It is a collection of information kung sino si IP address, kung kanino naka-assign si IP address sa MAC address. So, from the root level and then mga sub level. Ang tawag dyan, root namespace. So, root level represented by a dot. And then ito yung top level ng domain. So, ang tawag dito, domain. So, this is the top level of the domain. And then yung sub-level niya is represented by .com, .edu, .org. And then, between .com, sino ba mga organizations, companies, they have their own main domain. For example, .cisco, .microsoft, kaya merong .cisco.com, di ba? .microsoft.com. And this CompTIA naman is under .org domain. So .comptia.org. So the complete diba? The complete domain namespace is for the internet is www.cisco.com. Diba? So these top level domains, these are registered in the public internet. That these companies, these organizations are the only ones should be, and it defines where top domain they are associated with, kung saan sila kasama. So, every time, so from top level domain, nag-expand yan, may mga corresponding domain name na. And then, meron din tinatawag na fully qualified domain names. What are those? These are the host name na allocated by host. It's a character, 256 alphanumeric, and then usually much shorter. And then, ang a structure ng fully qualified domain name, or what's commonly known ng mga IT people is FQDN, no? Fully qualified domain name. Nandyan yung host name, yung device name or your computer name, your printer name, the domain name doon sa DNS, and the top level domain or suffix. So for example, in CompTIA, diba, the computer name and then the domain name and the top level domain, it belongs .org. CompTIA1.comptia.org. And then, ito yung tinatawag ng example ng fully qualified domain name. Ang ganito yung itsura niya, diba? The protocol, the subdomain, the domain name, and the top level domain. The root, actually, the complete root domain is the domain name and the top level domain. So, in a DNS service, ganito, just for you to understand, no? Ikaw yung client, you use a computer, meron DNS server. Nandito yung DNS table na yung IP address and MAC address na connected sa network. And then, from your network, from within the organization of CompTIA, it goes to the public DNS and then other DNS that it communicates with. So for example, ikaw ay CompTIA client, you go to the local DNS that you are connected with and then to the public DNS, doon na lamang saan ba to si CompTIA.org DNS. So ito yung public, parang public telephone, public mail, no? Pag I mean, you have to inform from there, where is it located? And then dito malalaman na nandyan si .com and nandyan si .org. And then dito talaga si CompTIA.org DNS. So makikita nyo by the numbering itself, and then it goes to each DNS back to your local pag back to your local DNS ay hindi ka diyan ba hindi ikaw, so balik tayo dito, so maybe this is you, and there you go, you get your connection. Marami nangyayari pala no sa networking ano. So and you have already heard about this too, yung URL, which stands for Uniform Resource Locators. Sometimes I forget that too. Kaya mas madaling tandaan, URL. What do you mean by URL? It's a protocol too. No? It's also a protocol. It is used for how to access an internet, a website, usually followed by dot and then slash slash. Yan ang yan ang complete URL. So before the host location or before the fully qualified domain name, either before the host location, either in the form of IP address or fully qualified domain name, may protocol, di ba? And then yung final destination like a file path. It's either a directory or file name, and it is usually delimited by a slash. So from this image, ito ang itsura ng URL, di ba? The protocol, the domain name, the path, and the web page itself. So kung babalikan natin yung internet application services that we discussed from the previous slide, nandyan yung, di ba, the transport layer that is responsible for addressing and then establishing the connection. Now we understand, ito pala yung protocol, yan palang gamit niyan, ano? And then yung application layer, ito yung sa user level. Like for example, when it comes to security or when you are transferring a file or sending a file, FTP, File Transfer Protocol, or for example, to browse a website, hindi pa secured, HTTP. Pag secure naman, nandyan din yung HTTPS of course. So, talking about websites and web pages, ito yung mga naririnig na natin, di ba? Yung HTTP and HTML. Na HTTP, that some of you already know, stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It's also a protocol. Ito yung ginagamit sa data transmission in the internet. This is the basis for the World Wide Web, the internet itself. Ito ang ito yung communication takes place from the client. Merong request and then it validates by the server to establish the connection. So a browser, di ba? We all know. So nandyan yung mga web servers, intranets o extranets, intranets within the organization using a browser then. And then meron din tinatawag na HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Ito naman ang to display the page. Ito ang protocol, the standard that is being utilized. Now, remember sa application level, yung SSL and TLS, this is I think I mentioned this earlier na when it comes to security, secure sockets layer for SSL, and TLS is transport layer security. Ito yung mga identity to authenticate a client, to validate by the server. When it comes to security, may mga encryption, may mga authorization nangyayari dyan. And this is the protocol na nagfa-function. Perhaps you have heard certificate authority. Diba? Ito yung the governing body that maintains and manages and validates the digital certificate. Digital certificate, ito yung authentication ID mo eh. This is to validate na this data is coming from a legit source. Yun ang certification dyan. So, client, of course, can choose to trust the certificate and CA. Iba about vendor, about organization, they have their own certificates and CA, of course. Parang ano yan eh. Let's say, our identity, meron tayong birth certificates. And then yung CA authority, ito yung, ano ba tawag dito? Yung government dyan sa, ano, sa atin. Oh, nakalimutan ko yung organization na yan. I'm sorry, but you know what I'm saying. Now, let's say for example electronic mail, since we're talking about networking, no, dito yung basic example ng how data is being transferred. What are the protocols are being used? So usually nandyan yung MIME, multipurpose internet mail extension. Yan ang ginagamit dyan. It allows you to attach, to do attachments aside from plain text messages. And then the technology or the protocol used sa email is yung SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, and may MX, yung mail exchanger. And then when you are, when the information being sent to the public mailbox, no, ito yung protocol naman, POP 3 kung tawagin, Post Office version 3, Post Office Protocol, I'm sorry, version 3, and the IMAP, the Internet Message Access Protocols. These are, standards being used in retrieving messages, sending messages into the public. So marami nangyayari, no, from application to transport layer. So from the properties itself, dito ina-apply, dito makikita yung mga protocol how it's being used. Like for example, the MIME, no? S-MIME is security. Encrypted, nandiyan na yung mga encryption, more secure delivery. And then the headers, no? Ano mga protocol na ginagamit from TLS or ang tawag dito, TLS or SSL. So when you configure an email, basically auto-configure lang yan eh. 'Di ba? Etong mga information na to, lalo na pag ang computer is within the domain, within the company, it populates your username, your email address, and the server, 'di ba? Yung protocol na sinasabi natin for public mailbox, and then the password account. So, may mga i-validate before you click next, you test, no? Ibig sabihin, nagpapadala ng ano yan, ng mga test email to validate your account, no? To confirm your account and email configuration, and then you have the right server, mail server. So, usually, pag automatic, as I've said, populated to. Pag hindi automatic, usually mga less or not fully configured email, or they prefer, if you're using a computer na hindi part ng domain, so you have to enter all of this. And these are the information na ang nakakaalam dyan, yung mga IT administrator, yung mga email admin, no? Yan. Yun ang mga personnel that who handles this. So in this unit, we covered the components of a network, of a computer network, and the function of the devices and each components, diba? And then we covered also the protocols and the technologies used in addressing a computer network. And then we also discussed the different kinds of connection, how computers are connected, whether it is a wired network or a wireless network. And then we describe also the common application protocols. Ito yung top level ng TCP/IP, remember? And those and the common protocols, lalo na sa email, we discuss all of that. So I hope this has been informative to you. See you in the next unit.